Good afternoon, everyone, and we are starting the First World War and the Russian Empire. In 1914, First World War started, and when war started, obviously there were two groups. Basically, it was not a First World War. It is a European war, and the whole Europe were divided into two parts, two groups. So we can say war broke out between two European alliances. Alliances means group. One alliance is known as Central Power and another is called Axis Power, allies. When we are talking about the Central Powers, that means Germany, Austria and Turkey, that are called Central Power or Axis Power, France, Britain and Russia. And after that, Italy and Romania were also included. That is called Allies powers. And you can see the map also. Central Power and Allied powers, First World War. These were the two groups. Each country had a global empire. Every country had a global empire and the war was fought outside Europe as well as in Europe also. If you remember in 8th standard also you have studied about that Indians also participated in the First World War. So this was the First World War. Now we will discuss about impact of First World War on Russian economy, or what were the condition of Russia during the First World War. Russia became a part of First World War in 1914. In the beginning, the war was popular. The Tsar refused to consult the main parties in the Duma. This led to weaken the support within Russia. Anti-German sentiments among the Russians because they were against Germans. So due to this, anti-German sentiments among the Russians were on an increase. And this we can see that St. Petersburg, a German name, was renamed as Petrograd. Russia's armies suffered defeats in Germany and Austria between 1914 and 1916. Casualties were so high, soldiers did not wish to fight such a war. The retreating Russian army destroyed crops and buildings to prevent them from being used by the enemies. This led to millions of refugees in Russia. The Tsar and the government were further discredited for the situation. They were not ready to take the responsibility. The war also having a severe impact on industries. Russia, which had few industries and that too were cut off from suppliers of industrial goods by German control of the Baltic Sea. Industrial equipments began to disintegrate. Railway lines began to break down. able-bodied men were called up to the war that resulted in labor shortage and shutdown of small workshops. Railway lines were also shut down. Grains were sent to feed, which led to food shortage in cities. So, riots at bread shop were common. So, we can easily understand the impact of First World War on Russian economy. For the people in the cities, this bread and flour became scarce, and by the winter of 1916, riots at bread shops were common. Now we'll move forward, that is the February Revolution in Petrograd. When we are talking about the February Revolution, that is not the main revolution of Russia. It is main revolution occurred in October 1917. But when we are talking about problem of grains, people were not able to feed themselves. So in that situations, in the winter of 1917, conditions in the capital, that is Petrograd, was grim. There was the food shortage in the workers' quarter. The workers' quarters and factories were located on the right bank of the river Neva. On the left bank were the fashionable areas, that is Winter Palace, and official buildings, including the palace where the Duma met. In February 1970s, food shortage were deeply felt in the workers' quarters. And the winter was so cold, there had been exceptional frost and heavy snow. Parliamentarians, that means the members of the parliament, wishing to preserve elected government, were opposed to the Tsar's desire to dissolve the Duma. So, in the protest on the 22nd February, a lockout took place at a factory. In the protest next day, workers in 50 factories called a strike in sympathy. Women also led the way to strikes, and this is known as International Women's Day. Demonstrating workers crossed from the factory quarters to the center of the capital. But at that time, no political party was actively organizing the movement. The fashionable quarters and official buildings were surrounded by the workers. So, government imposed a curfew as the quarters were surrounded by the workers. And demonstrators dispersed by the evening. But again, they came back on the 24th and the 25th. So government called out the cavalry and police to keep an eye on them. On Sunday, the 25th February, the government suspended the Duma. Politicians spoke out against the steps. Demonstrators returned in force to streets on the 26th. On 27th, the police headquarters were ransacked. The streets thronged with people raising slogans about bread, wages, better hours, and democracy. The government tried to control the situation and called the cavalry once again. But this time, cavalry refused to fire on the demonstrator. An officer was shot at the barracks of a regiment and 3 other regiments mutinied. That means they have protested, opposed, voting to join the striking workers. And by the evening, soldiers and striking workers gathered to form a Soviet or council in the same building as the Duma met. And that's why it is called Petrograd Soviet. Next day, a delegation went to see the Tsar. Military commanders advised him to abdicate. He followed their advice, and Soviet leaders and Duma leaders formed a provisional, that means a temporary government to run the country. Russia's future would be decided by a constituent assembly elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage. Petrograd had led the February Revolution that brought down the monarchy in 1917 February.